Are you sure this is the right word, alcoves?
Alcoves, yes. Kind of like nooks and crannies.
Nooks and crannies, yes. Perhaps this would be more accurate. Nooks and crannies rather than alcoves. Yeah.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. I'm the Kino Cowboy. I'm here with my very good friend and co-host Scott Keith. We are The Harbor. Today, we're talking about a film from 2008 that I missed in high school when everyone was talking about, not everyone, but a lot of people were talking about
Were people talking about this in high school? I
on
don't
the
remember
internet. Yes,
on the
not at our
internet.
school.
No, in our school in Arkansas, no kids weren't seeing this.
No,
I missed this too, and this is one. And
in Bruges is the title, by the way.
in Bruges, yeah, that's what. Well, yeah, but you can read. But presumably, um, uh, apologies to our. Never mind, I won't go into that. Our barbarian listeners that didn't take the extra points of character creation. I'm trying to start to say I'm trying to drive away as many viewers as possible by referencing
Okay, good.
D&D character creation at the very beginning of this In Bruges podcast video. I mean, but it's yeah, In Bruges. It's one of those I keep hearing. I guess it's considered a cult film, which even though like I know it's got a lot of awards and stuff, it didn't do huge. It's not I don't think it's a Hollywood production. It's anyway, if it is, I don't know what studio did it, but it's not it has a Focus Features and some other, it has like 4 production companies. So, cobbled together a lot of logos at the start, that sort of thing. But it's one of those like I keep hearing it referenced. I like the actors. And it's I see on like the Letterboxd top 4 films and they talk to people bring this up. And when I was, doing some research before this video, I try not to, go like listen to somebody's entire video essay on it because I want to have my own ideas, but I'll listen to like interviews with the cast and stuff, of course. But Martin McDonagh, if I'm saying that right, apologies to our Irish friends. Martin McDonagh, he was on Seth Meyers, and Seth Meyers, it was to promote 3 billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri, Billings, no, not Billings, Montana, Ebbing,
Whatever
Missouri.
it is.
Yeah, I don't like that movie, but
Yeah, that's what's interesting. We both like Banshees of Inisherin in this film, but that movie you always like crapped on, which I found funny. I never saw it, so
I think it's one of those. First of all, the director's Irish and not American, and it's about like American race relations. And second of all, it's one of those like movies about race designed to make white people feel better about racism. That's how it feels. It's not as blatant as like Driving Miss Daisy or The Help, where they're like I have a big problem. This is a common criticism of movies about race that set it in the past to act like it's something we've moved past. That can be I mean, you can do it right, of course. I'm not going to say like Amistad should be set in modern day, like obviously, but it's one of those things. Also, like it's a movie about race, but like there's really no principal black characters. Like they all have like a couple scenes from what I remember, seeing it in the theater. Like I remember seeing that in theater, my girlfriend and I at the time making fun of it, coming home and watching Brigsby Bears, a palate cleanser, and loving it. Go check that episode.
go check that episode out.
Yeah, completely different movie, but weirdly a better movie about trauma. But no, I always I also think it's just kind of an overstuffed movie. In general, I don't know. Maybe if I rewatched it, I would like it. And great cast, and Martin McDonagh can direct. But yeah. So this is one we're watching. Good old Marty McDonagh, Marty M. And another thing before we start talking about the actual movie is what is up with. I think he's overcome these sort of critiques, but for a long time Colin Farrell was like made fun of for being, I don't know, this certain type of actor where it's like he's always a bad boy or he's always this. Like I even remember there's a Family Guy cutaway gag where Stewie's making fun of Colin Farrell for like having a beanie and smoking a cigarette. He's like, "Ooh, you trying to act cool?"
Oh
Colin Farrell.
yeah.
like stuff like that. And even just like seeing what people at the time of release were talking about Colin Farrell in this. And I'm like, I don't know, because before this, I mean, he was in Minority Report and he was in that phone booth movie, which I haven't seen. I should see that. And SWAT and freaking Daredevil, which I won't hold against him. The New World, that's Terrence Malick. So I don't know where, I guess some of these other movies I haven't
Yeah, I
seen.
don't really know actually.
Because like I watch him in this and I watch him in Banshees. I'm like, he's great. Or even the Batman. I'm like, Colin Farrell's the shit. Like
People love Michael Mann's Miami Vice. That's got a lot of reappraisal
yeah,
recently.
that's like a cult following. And I don't know. And also, dude, actors get typecast. Like, I'm glad that he's older now on it and can do something like Banshees of Inisherin. Also, obviously, he's, friends or at least colleagues with Martin McDonagh and Brendan Gleeson from that.
Fucking insane in the Batman and Penguin,
Yeah,
which
have you been watching Penguin?
I haven't finished it, but I need to.
Yeah, is it good?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I've heard.
I just like at the time it started is when everything got really busy in my life.
Yeah,
So
I
now
get
I
you.
gotta go back and finish it.
Yeah. Um,
Even though I've had time for Severance. Sorry. I
Well,
don't
I
know.
don't know where it is because, like, even in this, all of these characters, because I understand it's one of these things where a lot of movies that are deeper than they appear on the surface have to market themselves a certain way. And the way this is marketed, just from like the poster and stuff, it's almost like an action comedy, which is I wouldn't call it an action movie. I would say it's a black comedy for sure. I think this is a very funny movie. It's not always
Yeah,
like
it is. But it was like the late 2000s and it was like it has to be a gangster comedy, it has to be, or like a gangster movie. That's how they played it, and it's not like that, but it still is very late 2000s in a lot of ways.
it
But
is.
it is interesting because like I remember like all of those movies back then, like Wanted. I remember, just stuff like that. It's like, what
Yeah,
if you could.
Wanted is, and I haven't even seen that movie. I've just seen clips of it. I should watch it. It looks stupid and fun, but
I'll just say, that kind of late 2000s kind of thing.
yeah, and I thought this, and I'm not the only one to think this, but when I was watching this movie, this is like it's like Martin McDonagh. He saw the opening scene of Pulp Fiction. He's like, let's just make that the movie, but make him Irish. And when he's talking about when Travolta's talking about being in Europe, let's just put him in Europe. Let's put him in Bruges, which is again another marketing thing, like one of the most literal titles. Another funny thing is I have a weird almost savant like thing with populations because in middle school I would finish whatever stupid worksheets we had to do as quickly as possible so I didn't have homework, and then I would read atlases for fun because that's all we had in the classroom. So I'm like really weirdly into like populations and statistics and stuff like that. Bruges has a population of like 100,000. They make it seem like it's like a 20,000 person town in
Yeah.
this city. And I'm assuming it is like a lot of those old medieval towns. You have your medieval city center where the movie really takes place, and then you have a bunch of like suburban development, like modern housing and stuff
Yeah.
outside of that. But it does add to the comedy of Colin Farrell's character, what's his name, Ray, like shitting on Bruges the whole time. But Martin McDonagh, he did have this thing where I saw an interview of him talking about it, and he got the idea because he was in Bruges. And he was like, I took a day trip from London, took a train. I was there for like 2-3 days, and he's like, the first day was fun, but then it was like, oh, there's really nothing else to do. But I think this movie is like a lot of other small town movies. What's that Michael J. Fox movie where he goes to the small town? And it's like the same plot as Cars.
I think it's Doc Hollywood.
Yeah, Doc Holliday, where like you discover the charm of small time life. I think this movie's kind of like it, as Londoners slash Dubliners, wind up in here. So it's him kind of almost retroactively trying to appreciate that and that style of life. Belgian life. I don't know. Belgium's a weird country, not in a bad way. It's just a weird country. It's in the middle of everything. It just has so many different influences, and they all speak like 4 languages. And then Flanders as a region is like when I think Flanders, I think painters. There's all these. If you ever go to like a art history, like a non art history, an art museum with like a bunch of historical pieces, it's like half the painters. It's like this Flemish painter. I'm like, why was everybody painting in Flanders the whole time? Like, what are they doing? Like, they got nothing else to do. These people don't have jobs. These socialist Europeans.
Uh, One of the more interesting aspects going in was the tone of the film, because I've heard it was a funny movie, but there's some whiplash in this movie, and I was wondering what how you would describe the tone overall.
Intentional. There's some whiplash, but I think it's intentional.
Yeah,
And I think this movie handles tone very well. That was one of the things I wanted to talk about.
yeah,
And I'm not saying it's exactly the same, but a movie I've been thinking about recent past couple days, just because I've been reading stuff about it, is Jojo Rabbit, which is a very different movie, but it has kind of a similar, like, really hard balancing act it has to do. Now that has an even harder balancing act because it's about things that really happened, and
yeah.
all that stuff that happened in the 40s. But the way that this movie balances tone, it also works because they're Irish, and like, I don't Irish people, I don't know, it's that sense of humor, that kind of brusque sense of humor that I really like. Irish people are really funny, I think. But I do think it's all rooted in character. First of all, I feel like all the jokes and dialogue, it is stylized, but A, it's very well performed, and B, like, there's enough difference in character. Like, you do have the classic between Ken, played by Brendan Gleeson, who's brilliant in everything as well. Like, you have this sort of straight man, wacky guy dichotomy, classic sort of comedic foils. So it all works there. And this movie uses a lot of dichotomies. What do film students call it? Dialectics? I don't know. I'm not sure what that word means entirely. I hear it used about editing. I hear like film students throw out the word dialectics. I'm like, I don't think that word, I don't think it means what you think it means. Sort of thing. But no, but it has all these whatevers, Dianetics, and they're all going at each other because you have like redemption versus crime, heaven versus hell, purgatory. Bruges is purgatory in this movie. That's very blatantly set up when they're looking at the Hieronymus Bosch triptych or whatever, which is interesting because I feel like, as an older man, Brendan Gleeson's character Ken is haunted by his past. I mean, he's old for a gangster, like, to have lived that long as a gangster. And first of all, this movie does a great job with the characters of doing like iceberg storytelling, where you get like the 10% above the water, but you can tell like these characters have probably pretty extensive backstories, and you can kind of guess at it, and you get flashes of that. But like Brendan Gleeson, he mentions he has a wife that was murdered, and then he, basically found someone to get revenge on him. And so there's this thing of like, does he see the hollowness of that? Was he already in crime? Like, I have the feeling Colin Farrell's character like he might have just been muscle, and then this was his first hit, and he just kind of worked his way up and botched it about as bad as you can go. We're gonna spoil this movie, of course, if you're watching this, but botches as bad as they go, and that's why they're in Bruges. We should make a drinking game every time we say the title of this movie. It really ballsy title because like it is one of those things like, who knows Bruges? Like, honestly, outside of Brussels, how many Belgian cities can you name? I don't think I don't think I can name any. But yeah, I don't know. I'm just rambling here. But you have this interesting thing where like Ray is so distraught by what he's done. He doesn't really care about all these cathedrals that are about salvation and holiness, but then he sees Hieronymus Bosch, and it's all about damnation and like purging of sin, and that is what connects to him emotionally. And I think that might even be before the big reveal. I could be wrong on that, on like what went wrong.
Well, it's not entirely unlike Banshees of Inisherin with the like how Colin Farrell's kind of lowbrow, crude, offensive, kind of an ignoramus, and then Brendan Gleeson's character is the more intellectual, soft-spoken, quiet
Seasoned.
type. And I found that interesting that they that because it was just kind of weird to watch, to have seen Banshees of Inisherin first and then go back and watch this, and it's like, okay, there's he obviously liked that dynamic a lot, but I also like that it plays with him. Okay, he's just a Ray's kind of a not that smart of a guy. Okay, he just doesn't like all this art and history because he's just that kind of a guy. And then you realize he's resistant. He doesn't want to stay inside that church because then you realize it's because of the guilt, and that completely just opens up the bottom of the movie.
Yeah.
And it's crazy how one flashback can completely shift the entire film. And especially because, like, child death is pretty taboo to a lot of people. And so
And this movie shows it.
yeah, and I was like, I was impressed, but also shocked, like that it was that in your face, like with the kid. And I was like, okay, this is a cool shift. I see what they're doing now, and I see why he was so resistant to some of this stuff in the city.
Yeah, because this movie very intentionally and intelligently, I think around the first, that's probably the first act break, is that reveal. And if I were gonna do and I think 3 act structures are like overly restrictive, and not every movie like neatly.
No, because I was gonna
Sometimes,
say this has kind of an unconventional
yeah, I would say too. But
structure.
if I were gonna layer that on there, it's just more European. That's why.
Yeah.
It's in Bruges. It's as you took a drink of your Coke. It's sort of I think we have the first act, which is very slow, the first 30 minutes, intentionally, because it's getting you into the same sort of lazy town fairy tale hangout movie mindset that the characters are in, of just waiting, which I enjoy. I do feel like a lot of audiences, especially now, people complain about movies with slow beginnings now. I'm like, no, sometimes you need that. I keep thinking about Sorcerer. It's a movie we did, William Friedkin, about trucking. It's very reductive, but and that movie has a lot of slow setup in the first act.
Saying Sorcerer's about trucking is one of the funniest things you could say, though.
It's like saying, I don't know, Star Wars is about sand or something.
Yeah,
well, it's there, but anyway, but things like that, like, I really like it when movies can take their time in the first act to really set up the world and bring you into it and transport you into a place, and this movie does that. And so you feel like you're on this journey with the characters, because 99% of people this movie have seen it. Yeah, where's Bruges? I still don't know where it is on a map. It's not even that small of a city. It's like 100,000 people, but and in Belgium, I think it's like the 4th largest city or something. Belgium only has like 12 million people. One time, this is a side note, one time I was at this party, and I was talking to this Belgian guy and this Indian guy, and I asked the Indian guy what city he was from, and he was like, well, one of the smaller cities. I was like, okay, but what's a smaller city in India? And he's like, oh, that's a good point. It has about 4 million. And then the Belgian guy was like, okay, so 1/3 my country. Sure. Okay. Like, I don't know. Just European populations, man.
I like it was refreshing to have a lot of humor towards Americans, just like, oh,
The
don't take it
Americans were
personally.
played by Welshmen too, which threw me off. The accent immediately, like, I can tell they're supposed to be American. It kind of confused me at first because they're fat and they have a Yankees hat, which is, you might as well have a neon sign saying I mean, a lot of people, I don't know if they wear Yankees hats. A lot of people wear like Rolling Stone shirts abroad, but that's, music's a universal language. Europeans hate baseball, actually. They hate baseball and American football because it's so like slow to them. Which is funny because we say the same thing about soccer, not football, soccer. But it is this weird thing. Like, I don't know if he just couldn't get an American actor, just didn't care, that added to the humor, because like, but it felt like how British people must feel when seeing Dick Van Dyke and Mary Poppins, where it's like they got the worst accent they possibly could.
It works so well for the movie, though.
It does. I don't know why. It just does.
Just
Because
does.
it's funny. It's comical. It's absurd. And the fact that he just doesn't even fight him. He outruns him. And I mean, Ray's one of those guys who you meet him and you think he's an asshole, and then you just realize he's blunt and has no filter. It's kind of the prime example of like he's not nice, but he's kind. If that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Which
Like,
is what the woman sees in him kind of immediately.
yeah. Also, she has a thing for bad boys, clearly, because her boyfriend is,
Skinhead.
skinhead who mugs tourists. Is he like a racist skinhead, or does he just happen to have?
I think he just appropriated the aesthetic.
The aesthetic to intimidate people. Which I don't know. It's being a skinhead in Belgium. Like, I don't think there's a lot of black people around. Like, I don't know what you'd be mad about. But I mean,
But also, I think he did try to be kind of a cool guy because, like, when he assassinates the priest, he says that like so and so says hello and then tries to be cool about it and then completely fucks it up. It's like, okay,
you should have just shot him through the screen. Like, I don't see why he didn't do that. And he's and I understand it's to be cinematic, and to lead to the complication of dead kid. But it is one of those things. Like, it's like this thing's he's seen too many movies,
yeah.
and then he tries to emulate that, and it just doesn't work. It's kind of like how I assume these guys are Irish mob. I don't know if they come out and say that, but that's what I'm going to assume. But it's kind of like how American Italian mobsters actually, because of The Godfather, started acting more like that, or so I've heard. I don't have a lot of mobster friends, but it is one of those things where, like, and also, what's the point of intimidating the guy? Like, he's not going to remember. He's going to be dead. I don't know. It depends on his views of the afterlife.
Yeah, but that's every speech to someone before they're about to get killed in a movie. You're kind of like, why even bother saying any of this? Some people just are that, some characters just are that vain and they feel like they have to say some shit. But it's like,
I could see it as you're having, because the guy's, shall we say, chaotic neutral. Throw out more D&D terms. Like, he's not evil, and he even says, I'm doing this for money. And the reason he says that is because he's trying to justify to himself in the confessional booth that he's not a bad guy. And the fact that he's saying it to a priest in the confession booth, he's probably thinking, the guy's Irish, probably raised, or not necessarily raised Catholic. I don't know if Dublin's majority Catholic or not. I know the Catholics and Protestants have had some shit before in that country, which I don't understand, because, like, Casher, who's been on this show 100 times, is Catholic, and I was raised Methodist, and I don't get it. I know it's more complicated than that. It has to do with political representation. I'm not going to go on a weird ignorant rant about the Troubles right now. I'm getting off topic. But just don't order an Irish car bomb at a bar in Dublin. That's all I have to say. Like going to New York, like, can I have a 9/11 Manhattan? But Jesus Christ, Scott. What was I talking? Yeah, but I feel like one of the reasons he's doing is he's kind of psyching himself up by playing the role, because he's probably never killed a person, it's certainly not on a hit like that. He's probably broken some bones, definitely has broken some bones before, but he's trying to psych himself up and, like, simultaneously do it like a quasi confession at the same time. Although I don't think the priest is going to absolve you if you point a gun in his face. And even if he does, I don't think God's going to count it.
There's some great lines of this movie I wanted to talk about, but I'm going to have to bleep them all out in post. But
yeah, we're past a minute. We're not going to get demonetized.
Well, no, I wouldn't want to say some of this shit anyway.
Oh, yeah. Like,
but
when can you bleep this out, what I'm about to say?
Yeah, I'll bleep anything
like
out.
For example, when they're but I mean, yeah, there's some funny, definitely not politically correct lines of this, like when he's saying, and bleep this out, please. He's like, yeah, I would like this town if I was born on a farm, but I grew up in Dublin, so there ain't shit to do here. He's like,
just out of pocket shit.
Out of,
like, he's like a big fat girl on a seesaw. Like, why would you say something like that?
That's so funny. And there's not that's not true. There's people of color in this movie, but, like, they're a prostitute. I don't think that's much better. This movie is definitely not the wokest movie. Although weirdly is, I don't know. Because there is some anti-racism when the dwarf is going on about the race war, the American dwarf. it's like he listened to Helter Skelter and was like, no, this is about the race.
Yeah, he was talking straight up Manson shit. It's so funny because like for a moment you think you kind of feel bad for the kind of shit they're saying about dwarves to him, and then it immediately cuts to him talking about Helter Skelter, and you're like, "Fuck this guy."
Yeah, and then Ray's like, I'll be on this black side. What side of and he's trying to explain like every person of color will be on the black side. He's like, what about the Vietnamese? He's like, the black side. He's like, well, I'm definitely joining them if the Vietnamese are joining. Like, damn, y'all didn't even fight in Vietnam, I don't think. But French did. So I don't know. It's
And
no.
but it's also like because of the way they joke in this film and the kind of humor, and just like you're kind of wondering if, at least I was for a second when Kin talks about his black wife who died, you think, well, maybe that's just being used as a bullshit to take the piss out on the dwarf. But then the more you listen to him say it, you're like, oh no, this guy's for real. This is,
Yeah, no, as soon as he started talking, I was like, and he had been established enough as like a more sensitive character. I'm like, no, this guy's for real. This guy is, he's probably like grew up poor, had to get like started making money doing like petty crime, was just naturally smart and would read a lot and like worked his way up into being like a hitman with internist. He had like Ray is like an intern hitman. I hope he's not unpaid. That'd be fucked up to have an unpaid intern.
yeah.
Like at least give me, the $11 an hour or 750, whatever it is nationally. It's $11 here. But no, I definitely got the idea, like, and that also connects with like why he is the way he is. I mean, that's one of my favorite scenes in the movie, not just because like it's so absurd and out of pocket what's going on, but because you do get that characterization. And the reason they joke like that, it all shows characterization brilliantly, I think, because I think Ray, he just has no filter, and he's from the rough and tumble streets of Dublin, where he probably had to carry a switchblade in his pocket when he was grown up. And that's just like how people joked in like what public housing. I forget what they call it in the UK. I know Dublin's not in the UK, but you know what I mean. Irish people don't get mad at me. I know there's a difference. But the common houses, I think, is that it? Anyway, doesn't matter. But you get this thing where it's like he makes these jokes and he's legitimately like excited to see a little person, which another thing that doesn't age is he's like, I don't want to be called a midget. I'm a dwarf. I'm like, well, now they're even past that to little people. But then you get this thing where like dwarves and like dwarfism is like a specific medical diagnosis. That's a specific thing. And there's like different medical conditions that can lead to you being a little person. So
Well,
I don't think the characters in this.
I've met a little guy who says he prefers dwarf over little person. So now it's like, well, what is it?
Right. It's like everybody says Native American, and then some Cherokee guy will be like, I prefer Indian. It's like, okay, so what do we do? And I refuse to say Latinx because that's white people shit. That's completely why. Just say Hispanic if you want to be gender neutral about it. Jesus Christ. But but no, it is a thing. Little person's verbose, but I feel like, for instance, Ray is legitimately worried about like the mental health of this little guy, but it's also because he himself is having suicidal thoughts intensely. So he's projecting that. It's all projection when he's like, I hate this town sucks, blah blah, this screw you, you're an idiot. It's this guy doesn't know how to deal with his own feelings because that's the environment he grew up in, where you had to externalize it, often violently.
I like that it's his personality, but he's also that blunt that when he goes on that date with the woman, she's like, what do you do? He's like, oh, I kill priests and children. And then oh, okay, that's a joke, right? No, and then she replies that she sells drugs to people on
She
sets, which she does. So
He
it's like, well,
does. No, it does. Is a thing. I mean, bro, if you have a bunch of Americans actors and stuff and just different people and whatever weird faux artsy. It's so funny how the little guy talks about is he's like it's Euro trash bullshit like on the protection because you get in there like later in the movie. I think it might be the last scene, which we're not going to talk about that right now. But you see people wearing like mouse head costumes, like they're at a furry convention or something, or like they're doing Mouse Guard or Tales of Nim, Rats of Nim stuff, and you're just like, what is this movie? Which I do wonder what it's like. The film within a film. I would like to see it.
Yeah.
But it does seem ridiculous. It does seem, even though it's a European director, it's funny. It's almost like an American wrote a parody of what they view like indie European film to be, like this weird theatrical stuff, which I didn't know until I watched this and was reading up. Martin McDonagh has a background in theater. He started as a theater director, which makes a lot of sense to me now that it's very like dialogue driven, character driven sort of movies. I don't know. There's something about it that like, I don't know, it just tracks to me, you know.
That's how I felt. Kind of the structure of the plot was a little more similar.
Do you think it's more like a 5-act structure?
I don't know. It didn't feel like a traditional structure to me. But the best example of a film within a film is in Mr. Bean's Holiday, where Willem Dafoe plays this guy named Carson Clay. It's like this fucking parody of like a kind of experimental kind of movie. I remember I rewound that as a kid and like rewatched that a ton. It was so funny.
It's like, it's funny when we were watching 8.5, which hopefully your copyright appeal has gone through on that and we can get that episode up soon.
Oh no, they reviewed it and denied it, so I'm gonna have to release it without any clips in it. So,
dude,
that was a waste of time.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Well, if that is, I don't know if that'll come out before this or after.
It will.
Okay. So anyway, so I know when I was watching 8.5, it made me think of like, you know how in Grand Theft Auto 5 you can go to the theater and they have like the parody films that are like parody European art films. That made me think of that when I was watching it. But no, this is a great movie. What's her name? The love interest, Clemence Posey. I was wondering where I saw her. She was in Harry Potter. She was in Goblet of Fire.
Okay.
She was Fleur Delacour.
That clicked with me just now. Okay.
Yeah, I was like, where have I seen this chick?
Yeah.
She has this thing where she's beautiful, but it's not a Hollywood beauty. It's a very natural beauty in a way that I like. Because we saw the movie Companion recently at an early screening, actually, which I really enjoyed that movie. We're not going to do an episode on it, but yeah, I would recommend it if you're watching this and still at a theater near you. Good date movie. That's why he and I went. But it's like, what's her name in that movie Companion? It's like she has kind of like crooked front teeth. Iris, yeah, but Sophie Thatcher, that's her name. And she's beautiful, but she has like some crooked front teeth. And I just kind of like some imperfections in my actors. We were talking about that and how like Clemence Posey, you know, she has some like moles and stuff, but it's not all like brushed out and, you know, like plastic surgeoned out. I don't know. I like it. That's all I want to say. I like it. She's really cute. And I would let her ruin my life the way I would go Colin Farrell.
Once we got the initial flashback when we realized what he did and that it went so hard as it does, then everything else falls into place for me. Because then I'm like, okay, now I see, like, it's obvious why Brendan Gleeson's here now, and it's not just to make sure he's safe. Okay, so he's going to be asked to kill him. And that fell into place. But what I liked is that I like the kind of thing like in this movie where you hear a character like Harry over the phone for the first majority of the film. You don't see that character until later, and you don't really, because I hear the voice, but I didn't immediately think, oh, Ralph Fiennes, because I didn't look at the cast before I watched it.
I knew Ralph Fiennes was in this movie, but I forgot it until he showed up.
Yeah,
because I was in the story, and then he shows up. I'm like, oh, it's Ralph Fiennes.
But it's like
He's also using a different accent than he does in a lot.
He does such a great performance just through his voice that I kind of zoned out and was not paying attention to any of the cinematography. But then I refocused in and realized like they're just keeping it close on Brendan Gleeson's face, and we're just listening to it. But they craft his character through the phone so well that it takes you on a mental journey. Because I'm imagining this guy. This guy is comically like into this town and its magic, kind of like how I am with like theme parks and shit. So it was really fun. I was thinking about like when.
Is that what you would send him to Disney World for one
No,
last
well,
time?
I'm just saying Ken, the way Ken is like, oh yeah, Ray, he kind of didn't really like it. He's not really into this kind of thing. And the guy's like, what? Like severely pissed off.
But that lets you know how unstable he is and how weird he is.
Yeah, he
So,
has to walk it back.
And it gives you enough exposition with that character where like when he starts making his weird decisions, like there are weird decisions made by characters in this movie, but they all make sense in character. It's not like a horror movie where you can tell the writers are making the characters do stupid things because it needs to happen for the plot. The characters are doing stupid things because the characters are kind of stupid.
Yeah, and it did make me think of like how much I like certain theme parks and shit. And like, what do you mean he didn't enjoy what? He didn't enjoy Haunted Mansion or Pirates of the Caribbean? I'm gonna have to come fucking kill him. No, but it was just like so funny, like how enchanted this guy is.
This is every day for me, Harbor Heads. This is every day.
Not.
It's hard every day. It's the Haunted Mansion.
Oh yeah, okay.
Every day. Okay, what were you saying? Sorry, I was doing a bit.
But his enchantment over Bruges is so funny, and I also like the easy comedy of Brendan Gleeson's type of character having to pretend to like send Ray out, and then oh well, he could be behind the door. He's like, now I have to check behind the door. It's just easy comedy that works so well for me because it's his kind of a character would specifically get annoyed that he walked himself into that corner and now he has to just do this stupid shit. So I really like that sequence.
No, it's good. Brendan plays it. They both play it brilliantly.
Yeah.
And the whole thing about he loves Bruges because it reminds him of his childhood. He said he went on a family trip there when he was younger, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Is that what he says? And that's why he's so like, Ray's got to die for killing a kid. I would shoot myself immediately if I killed a kid. He has kids, and I think he kind of resents that his job takes him away from him. It's this weird paradox because this movie's full of him, where it's like he got sucked into this, I assume, sucked into this life of crime and worked his way up. Who knows? Although his parents are enough to give him a holiday to Bruges, but also that's like us taking a holiday to Florida because it's Europe. Yeah. But it's this thing where like he wants to do the good he can, but he's in the profession he's in, and also he's crazy. Like these characters, they're just all unstable. Yeah, God, these characters are so complex, and I love it. I love that about this movie.
Also, the detail when they're talking about Bruges, and Ken's like, "Oh, when was the last time you came?" And he says, "07," which is the same year they're shooting the movie. So it's like, oh, he's just there. He likes this place a lot.
That's a crazy thing. That's like my family going to Destin every year. I'm like, we can go to a different beach.
Yeah.
Like, we don't have to go. Like, we don't have to stay at the same condo every year.
Also, that guy, when they're at dinner, it's kind of that Larry David Curb Your Enthusiasm thing where like a situation where it's like, okay, he's having smoke blown in his face. He's pissed off. They weren't intentionally blowing it towards him, but also the fact that they're in the smoking section. Like, what can you really do?
Yeah. And it's Europe. Everybody smokes.
He didn't deserve to be beaten down, but like, it's, I mean, you kind of could have asked to be moved somewhere else if possible. Or
no, yeah, that guy's in the wrong. That's the thing. It is very much a Larry David where like somebody made a ridiculous thing. Although Larry David could be both. I mean, it was probably just like, oh, it's a 30-minute wait in our non-smoking, but we can get you smoking immediately. That's what it was. And also you can just be like, hey, can you blow that a little more that way? Which smokers, granted, I've never sat in the smoking section. Restaurants don't even have that anymore. But Um, sometimes I'll be hanging out with smokers. I'll be like, "Hey, can you hold the cigarette a little farther away?" And they're always very aware. They're like, "Oh, my bad, sorry."
I haven't sat in a smoking section since I was 10 years old, so
Yeah,
it's been a while.
yeah,
But yeah, but imagine Larry David fucking punching someone in the neck or something like that. That'd be crazy.
yeah. The next season of Curb is gonna be in Bruges. Him just getting mad at Eurotrash.
But it's also a great setup because Ken and Ray justify Ken fighting and killing that guy who came at him with the bottle, which is already insane. Like he didn't have to fucking kill him. But that setup is there so because that lady comes out with him with a bottle, so he immediately panics and hits her, punches her down. It's like, well, she had a bottle. So
Which I understand the argument. I'd be I don't know, reflexes happen.
yeah.
Somebody comes at me with a weapon, and then even later they're debating. It was like, well, you can kill someone with your fist too. What is this? Like, where's the line drawn? It's like, that's a good point.
A lot of great dark humor. I know that sounds Reddity saying that, but
No,
I don't know. It's like
it's not. This is a movie. This is like a black comedy. It's
I also like the realistic because it bugs the shit out of me where people act like blanks and guns still shouldn't be pointed at people or something. And this is a movie that directly shows you what can happen when he's trying to sleep with the woman and there's a gun to his head and it's the guy just has it full of blanks. He still shoots it in his face.
which is such an interesting choice. I mean, I guess it shows character of like this guy's a thug, but he's not a killer. Even though he does have real bullets, but clearly he's in the criminal underworld to some degree because he knows that Yuri guy who's an arms dealer,
Yeah.
whatever, who's like really into the word alcove. It's like the only time he gets to practice his English
Yeah.
is when people come to buy guns. So he's like, "Oh, I learned these new words. I have to work them into conversation."
I've been hyper fixated on very specific
Yeah, dude.
words.
No, it's like these are the words. I think a lot of people do that where they learn a word from a book and they're like, "Oh, now I have to use it in conversation."
Now
It's
I
like,
see it everywhere. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like when you get a new car, and then you see that car everywhere.
All these characters have all their interesting traits, and it's like quirky, but not in an annoying way. It could have easily been in a very annoying, contrived kind of way, but it all just works. And maybe it's more of, I don't know. Feel like he knew how to ride the line with that.
Yeah, that's what I've been. I mean, he tonally, I think this movie rides the line perfectly. I mean, I don't really. I mean, this is one of those movies I don't really have any criticisms for. I'm not saying it's like the best movie, 10 out of 10 movie, but I don't think there's a lot of fat on this movie whatsoever. And I wouldn't change a word personally. Not that I think this is that kind of channel. We're not Cinema Sins where we're pointing
Yeah.
out stuff like that, but
I'll
I
ask
think
you this. Did you think watching it Kim was gonna kill him or not?
I I think I was leaning toward no, but I could see the possibility of there being yes. And part of the thing is I was like, well, first of all, this movie has at least like 30, 40 minutes left by my internal clock. So what would happen if he just went up and shot? Would Colin Farrell just not be in the rest of it? Or would they be chasing each other around Bruges, shooting at each other? Which it seems like any gunshots in Bruges would be pretty noticed pretty quickly, you know. So the way it happens is really clever because he's about to do it.
Yeah.
Like he's doing it.
But was he? Like, if he didn't pull out that gun, do you think he still would have pulled the trigger?
I think he had psyched himself up and he had done it. He's killed people before. He's a hitman, you know.
Yeah.
So he's probably killed like 10 different people over the years. So it's one of those things where he's probably able to either rationalize or like distance himself from his actions in a way. And also he's like, if I don't do it, somebody else is going to do it. It might as well be me, so I can make it quick. Like there's a lot of ways you could play that in your head and on the screen. But I think when he puts the gun to his head, it snaps him back to reality you know. And he's also like, I think Ken sees himself as like, so this movie's all about redemption, right? Um, and about overcoming your sordid past. And I think Ken almost sees himself as irredeemable, you know. So for see, but then even the idea of Ray, and this is just me speculation. Brendan's obviously very into cathedrals and history and stuff into the past, but maybe he's the kind of guy who thinks that if you kill yourself, you go to hell. You can't go to heaven or even purgatory. Like that's an automatic no. Maybe he's Catholic, or maybe he's just somebody who believes that. That's just pure speculation on my part. But also, he's like, I don't want your last act to be the sin of suicide, you know? Like, I don't want you to add another sin on top of that. But then I also, like, I don't want you to hold that against yourself in the same way that I hold my sins against myself, you know? Which is why when he comes to his senses, he wants to, you know, give him a better life. He's like, doesn't know where he's going. He's like, I don't know, go to Asia or somewhere, you know?
But he does give that rationale of, you know, that kid's not coming back anyway. If you die now, it doesn't help anything. At least if you stay alive, you can try and help and make things better in some way, somehow.
Right. Which I think is true. It's like, it is that idea of like needing to move forward. Which, and it is funny. And, you know, Ralph Fiennes' character, Harry, later in the movie brings it up. Like, he was going to shoot himself. That would have solved all of our problems. That would have solved my problem and your problem and his problem. Which is true. Like, this movie would have, I don't know. Well, that's kind of the philosophical thing. Would it have been better if you just let him kill himself? And even though, spoilers, obviously, like basically everybody dies at the end of this movie, like, is that redemption worth it? Like, is it better to redeem yourself, but there be more death because of it? Like, or would it have been better for him to just kill himself right there? You know?
Yeah, because then
you have things. I mean, this is where you get into this almost trolley problem sort of dilemma. But it's like, well, he has this thing, and I appreciate this movie for doing this. He's like, you can save the next one, and then Ray's like, what do you mean the next one? The next kid? What next kid? But then we have the scene. It's another one of my favorite scenes where the innkeeper, the pregnant innkeeper, is on the stairs, and like, you're not going up there. And he's like, I don't. He's like, all right, on the 1, 2, 3, go. I'm gonna jump out the window, and then you can chase me out and shoot at me at the canal. Which is
yeah, why even agree to this shit? I don't know.
Because he doesn't have any. He kind of wants to die.
Yeah,
but that's in a weird way him saving her. But then you get into the argument of like, well, if he had just killed himself initially, he dies anyway, and then that person wouldn't be hurt. But karmically, is it better for him to do that and then save her that way rather than nothing happened to her from inaction and her never being in harm's way in the first place? And are you actually helping her if you're the reason she's in harm's way?
Ken would still be alive. That's the main thing. If
Yeah.
he would have killed himself, then Ken wouldn't have to face Harry because he'd already be dead. The job would be
Ken
done.
and Harry and the little guy would all be alive.
Yeah. God.
Which it is insane. I'm trying to piece it together. I guess it's just guilt, him living in his guilt of him blowing his brains out in broad daylight in a playground.
On a playground.
I don't know what's going through his head. That seems like the worst way of redeeming yourself. Maybe you're like, hey, kids, I'm sorry I killed one of your own. I'll prove to you that I'm regretting it. I was like, okay, you just traumatized like 50 kids in this neighborhood who are like,
I don't know if who was around or who wasn't.
I mean, wasn't there a kid around?
I don't know, but it's so funny because he's like, don't do that. Like, can we just please go and talk and then go sit down on playground?
Yeah, but somebody's got to find the body, and then some mom's going to take her kids there, and they're going to be police tape and stuff, and they're going to be like, "What's happening, mommy?" Like, it's not going to be good, even if it's the actual gunshot. But again, Ray is not. I think a lot of people who get attracted to crime, they're not the most forward-thinking people. They're very like here and now, you know. I'm like, I need money now. Oh, I can do this and get it. You know, I feel like Ray has probably spent a lot of time in discotheques doing Molly or ecstasy, as they called it in 2008. That's why this place bores him, or he just wants to go grab a pint. That's also just because he's Irish. And also Belgian beer is good. I like Belgian beer. But yeah, you have this. I forgot what I was saying. I don't know. It reminds me of Looper when they're the movie Looper, Ryan Johnson. When Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character is talking about how in that movie, yeah, you have like 20 years of making money as kind of a hitman for the time travel mob or whatever, but then they end up killing you for the plot, basically, because the movie demands it. And he's like, this movie doesn't, or this profession does not attract the most forward thinking people. And that's what it, that's what it is, I think, with a lot of people. Or you're from a background where you think, oh, I'm not gonna make it till 30. Like you hear rappers talk about that in their lyrics. They'll be like, I made it to 30, or like I wasn't expecting to make it till 30,
Yeah.
Coolio being like, well, I'll make it to 24. I don't know. But uh the so it's that you gotta burn twice as bright if you're gonna burn half as long. It's that sort of mentality. That's why people are still attracted to Scarface, even though he gets his comeuppance in the end of that movie, is because they're like, well, if I'm gonna go out sooner than somebody who's not in this life, I might as well live it up while I can and like have people respect me, which is kind of the opposite intent of the movie. But that movie is really weird and uneven anyway.
I, I like that Harry is like a legitimate man of his word. Like that payoff is so funny and also fucked, but like,
No, even the last scene of this movie is funny.
yeah,
People talk about how like dark and depressing and it is, but like it's still funny. And it's just the like sitcom situation of he thinks he kills a kid when he actually killed a little person, and then Ray's trying to tell him like, no, he's not a kid. And he's like, I'm a man of my word. It's
fuck it.
absurd. Even the physical comedy, as unrealistic of it as it is, of Ken is bleeding out in that church when they have that pretty well done, like well directed, like kind of scuffle in the stairwell, you know,
Yeah.
and you know, Harry disables Ken, shoots him in the neck, so he's bleeding out. He's like, all right, I don't have to kill him now. I can just walk off and do my thing. And then Ken's like, okay, I'm bleeding out anyway. I'm not gonna make it to the hospital. I'm just gonna jump off this bell tower. And like even that, the way he hits is like weirdly comedic, like an R-rated Wile E. Coyote pratfall. He just the way he slams.
He wants to warn Ray, but also give him his gun, but the gun is like completely fucked from falling.
It's
It's like,
funny.
well,
That's funny.
okay.
And, um, I mean, this movie it does that classic, just like there's a complication for every unit of story. It's almost a comedy of errors. Like
Yeah, because he gets on the train, and then of course the Canadian happens to be on there, so he gets taken back to Bruges.
and aren't they kind of mad? Like he thinks they're, because that's a common thing, common kind of joke is like he thinks he's American and he's Canadian. And he's like, fuck. It's like,
You hit a Canadian.
who hates Canada other than our government? Political. But no, it was one of those things. Like I even think of like Canada has like our national stereotypes about Canadians is that they're polite. It's like even our insults aren't even really insulting to Canadians. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I guess the final thing he says about purgatory and that he actually didn't want to die kind of ties the movie up for a lot of people. I think that's really what brought it together because I didn't have to point out because you kind of like start to see the themes on the wall. Like he sees this place as hell, and then Ken sees it as heaven. Both are there, and you kind of get a sense of like Ken kind of wants to maybe quit the business, maybe and escape because he really likes this kind of peace, stuff like that. So you get a sense of like biblical shit at the end, I guess. I don't know.
No, I get it. They really underscore that, but not everybody who's watching this is as kino as we are.
Okay, well, I wouldn't say that. But yeah, in Bruges. Now, if you want, now I might If you want to hear us talk about Banshees of Inisherin, we have a best of 2022 episode. I might tag that piece on at the end of this as like a bonus thing. So look for that, if you want to watch that, I guess, for more. What's his name? Director
Martin McDonagh.
Martin McDonagh. Now, that's
Was
interesting.
this was a good palate cleanser after seeing Brendan Gleeson wasted in Joker 2. I'll say that. He's one of the better parts of that movie, probably, just because he's him.
And now the joke is on me. Yeah, that's crazy that this is this guy's directorial debut. He's only done
It
four
is. It is.
movies.
When I learned that, I was kind of blown away. But he did direct, I think, some shorts, and then he had theater directing under his belt.
Yeah. Seven
I think.
Psychopaths. I saw that in theaters. That was funny.
Yeah, I didn't see. I remember you telling me though. I remember you telling me to go see that, and I wasn't able to see it. I might watch
That was
that.
like, I think in high school,
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
at
Um,
least for me.
it's it's yeah. I don't know. It's a good movie. I know he storyboarded a lot. For this movie, he did like stick people because I saw an interview where Colin and Brendan were making fun of him for the matchstick drawings he had of all these people. But that has got to be an interesting transition from theater to cinema director. I mean, it's one of those things like directing. I don't know. There's not a lot of jobs you can transition into directing from that has a
Yeah.
lot of transferable skill. Like it's you kind of just direct, even if you're like a cinematographer or something, like it's still completely different.
Okay, let's see. Next week on the Harbor, we are doing Blue Valentine for Valentine's Day. Look forward to that one. In the meantime, thanks for listening. We have plenty of episodes on here. Go check those out if you like this one. We have plenty more. We have plenty of video essays now, similar stuff, kind of. But I've got a new one out. Go check that out if you want to support us. I got a book for sale. Scott does comedy. He's got an Instagram. I've got an Instagram.
Yeah, Scott K comedy.
There's all kinds of avenues to spread our stuff around if you want to, we're trying to grow a lot this year. We grew a lot last year, but I'm really trying to grow this year. So help us out with that. If you really like it, find a movie that you really like that your friends also seen, send them our episode. Say, hey, these guys, they have some conversations we like. So anyway, thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you next week.